this is kind of the fruit, the synopsis of all the work that I've had to do in my own life to figure out who I was. And so that's why we're passionate about calling our worship ministry Third Culture Worship, is that because we feel that this journey of self-discovery leads us all to our Creator.
Between the Grooves is hosted by James Kurtis, music director and morning man in the Greater Toronto Area on Joy Radio, and Ayiesha Woods, Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, and musician. Together, they talk with artists and industry insiders to discover our connection between music and faith. You can connect with us on Facebook or Twitter at Between Grooves. Now, here's James and Ayiesha.
Hey, welcome to Between the Grooves. Hope you have your coffee. I've got mine. Do you have yours, Ayiesha?
I have tea.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. Coffee is the only acceptable beverage to drink while you're listening to Between the Grooves. Can I make that statement?
English breakfast tea. English breakfast tea. Okay. You gotta have some.
Okay, as long as it's hot. As long as it's hot. We're in fall now. We're in autumn, and cold beverages are just not a thing. Anyways, today it's all about music, of course, and adding a little bit of culture into the music.
Yes.
We live in a multicultural world. I live in a very multicultural city. Toronto is very, very multicultural. There's, you name it. People move from all over the world to Toronto. And so it's very dynamic. It's always changing. It's whether it's the people themselves, the language, the food, whatever else. It's very, very different all the time, which is great.
That's nice. You know what? That's interesting. You're there in a pretty multicultural society and city. I am too. And our guest today is also from a pretty multicultural city, California, right smack in California, San Jose.
Now, how do you know Vaughn?
I'm trying to think. My initial connection was through ministry.
Okay.
And we went to a Vietnamese restaurant the last time we were with Vaughn. It was best food ever. Oh my gosh, I can almost still taste it, and it's been some years. But it was so, so good. And I actually have not been to an authentic Vietnamese restaurant since then.
It could just be heartburn, the reason why you can still taste it.
All these years later.
Yeah, that's right. I can still almost taste it. Yeah, that's heartburn. But we're not going to be talking about food in this episode, what we just did. We're not really going to be talking about food. We're just going to be talking about different cultures. And everybody, comes from, when you think about North America specifically, everybody in North America has come from a different country initially, the forefathers and everything else.
For sure.
And so we've become this eclectic group of people that are all trying to get along and work together and play together and make music together. And that's what this conversation is about. Vaughn Thompson on Between the Grooves. Your wife says the same thing about you.
Absolutely.
Vaughn, I just watched I Am Third Culture.
Oh, okay.
So, and I would encourage everyone to watch I Am Third Culture. Just
I'm telling you.
Google that online on YouTube or whatever. It's interesting because we live in a world of short attention spans. And I don't know how, like, if you're listening to a sermon at church or you're watching something online, it's easy just to click on to the next video, right? And I could not click on to the next video.
I'm telling you.
I work at a radio station. I'm the morning show host and I'm the music director in Toronto at a Christian radio station. And can I tell you, when I get songs sent to me, first 20 seconds, 30 seconds of the song, and I've already decided if I'm going to add it or not.
Wow.
For me to watch the entire video, it was, I had to keep watching.
From start to finish.
From start to finish. Absolutely. It was very well done, very well explained, and made me think, what is a minority these days anyways?
Right.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for watching and the feedback on it. It's we were just trying to find a way to just kind of explain to people what we mean when we say third culture. And so it was just really just trying to tell our story in a in a different type of way, in a creative way, and also a way that we thought was fun. And and it's honestly, it was quite interesting that I never even sat down trying to do it. It was just it was a collection of lines and phrases when people would ask us, what is third culture? Well, and then we try to explain it this way, that way. And so I just started collecting phrases and rhymes, and it just started accumulating. And my wife said she liked it when I read it to her one time, and I was like, I respect her opinion. So I was like, okay, well, let's try it. And then it turned into like, how can we add visuals to it? And so, and then it just came into what you see now. And it's been a fun project for us.
You guys have a little guy. Is he in that video?
He is. He plays young me. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So for those who have not yet seen the video, but they're planning to see the video, just I'll call it Cole's Notes. I don't know if you know that expression, but
I've never heard of it.
Cole's. So when you're in school, I guess high school, and you had to do a book report or something, you could buy a book called Cole's Notes, and it would give you the synopsis of the book, and kind of a cheat sheet in a sense, because, well, the teacher would know that you used the Cole's Notes basically to know what the story was about or what the book was about and stuff. So could you give us a Cole's Notes on what I Am Third Culture is?
Well, I would say it's my attempt to define the phrase third culture through my story and how it connects to my faith and how I believe that it connects all of us to our origin, our creator. Mm-hmm. The term third culture classically has been used by a sociologist named Ruth Hill Using, who observed the behavioral patterns of missionary kids and military kids growing up in foreign countries. And so she observed that these children would grow up in a culture that they were not familiar with, and they would have to naturally navigate this world of intersection between their parents' birth culture and the culture that they were immersed in. So as they would go to school, they would naturally have to probably speak another language at school. They would eat different foods at school. They would be surrounded by people that didn't look like them at school. And then they would have to go home, and then they would have to put on another hat, speak another language, engage in another culture. And she said that as these kids developed, they would naturally integrate their first culture with their second culture. And regardless of the combinations of whatever their ethnicities and their cultures and their languages, they would naturally develop this unique and distinct third culture. Would be a hybrid, a fusion of the two that would create something distinct and new. And so when I heard this, when I started reading some of her writings, I realized that this gave me language to interpret my bicultural upbringing that I struggle with so much. You know, I didn't feel Korean. I didn't feel white. I felt other. And it sounds weird to talk about it now, but like it stunted my emotional maturity. I harbored a lot of anger towards Korean people and towards white people. I think, and it caused me to be very insecure. And to the point where like I literally took a trip to Korea to meet my family, where it was the first time I actually felt Asian in my life.
Wow.
So it was really just me trying. This is kind of the fruit, the synopsis, or the Cole's Notes, if you will, of all the work that I've had to do in my own life to figure out who I was. And so that's why we're passionate about calling our worship ministry Third Culture Worship, is that because we feel that this journey of self-discovery leads us all to our creator. So it's like we're all third culture people in the sense that like spiritually, this world is not home. And so we need to live with the intentionality that, okay, how can we engage this culture that we're not actually of this culture? So yeah, it's become somewhat of a passion for us too, is like, even as we are raising a third culture kid ourselves. Like,
yes.
How can we give him language that he doesn't get stuck into saying like, well, Mom, am I Mexican or am I Korean or am I, what is it? And to have him, whoever is searching for their identity, that they would follow the lines and the origin back to their father, their heavenly father.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is from Guyana. My parents are Dutch, so I'm very white, meaning, quite frankly, I burn very easily.
Yeah.
My wife can burn. You just don't notice it. But it's interesting because years after we got married, and we've been married for 25 plus years. Years after we got married, I saw the term online on social media about interracial marriages. Mm-hmm. And actually, when I first read it, I thought to myself, I wonder what that is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd never heard the term before in my life. And I thought, that's kind of a strange term. And then when I realized what it meant, it's like, oh, I didn't realize there was a classification for that. To be honest, I live in a very multicultural city in Toronto.
Sure.
And even when we had kids, they didn't know anything about color or any of that stuff. I mean, I think it's great when kids don't know there's a difference. When they were both in kindergarten, like they had friends from different countries and stuff, and they didn't think anything of it. And they probably didn't till they were a little older. Mm-hmm. So when I saw the video, I Am Third Culture, it kind of struck me as one part of me says, do we need that? Do we need to show people that? And the other part is, I guess so, based on my experience, like people don't understand that people are from different cultures with different ethnicities, from different countries, mixed marriages and everything else. So is that kind of what prompted some of that for you?
It sure was, having the stark contrast of the cultures in my home every day to navigate. And to your point, when you're living it, it's not odd to you. It's normal to you.
Yeah, exactly.
But it only becomes odd when you go into spaces that you're the alien. Mm-hmm. And when I grew up as a kid, in the 80s, I grew up in a small rural town in Maryland. So very homogeneous. It was everybody's, mostly, white. And my mom was like one of the only, minorities in that small town of maybe 1,000 people. Wow. And so in our school, I just kind of like the video explains, I was made fun of by, that's what kids do. And but when I would go to the Korean church with my mom, I was the alien there, the other way.
Yeah.
And that's what caused I didn't understand it. And it, like I said, it just caused me to be insecure and self-aware. So it was that struggle that forced me to kind of really find out who I was. But then, it's like for all of us that those things that are problematic in our own lives become bridges to people of where you can connect with them and, have a conversation about what makes us more in common than what makes us different. Mm-hmm. So like I noticed my wife didn't even understand when I would explain to her, and she could probably even talk about this, that like, yeah, go ahead.
I when he started sharing about this, because I'm from Southern California, where it was very diverse and like seeing intercultural marriages and everything is very normal. And so when he would come tell me, I'd be like, what's the big deal? Like, that's cool. Like you're mixed. And then I went to go visit and I kind of got to see like where he grew up. But then how I was able to attach myself to this, I mean, it was very real for Vaughn. And the way I was able to attach to this is to be like, we all have our unique cultural fingerprint because there's not one journey on life that is the same. And everything in our life is God can use and is God ordained. And so we started to use the word misfit, that because everybody feels out of place somewhere, no matter where you grow up and where you're at. As we grow up, we're all trying to find and navigate our way. But then the kind of with third culture is you take on whatever it is that has been given to you and you remixed it and you become this mixed fit, which is your own remix, which is only you. Like there's only one fingerprint, but there's also only one of you, your unique identity. And so we wanted to help people realize that they belong and that their uniqueness is not going to ever fit in one box, because we're all a melting pot, right? So wherever it is. And so I felt like even for Zion, he goes around, he's like, I'm a third culture kid. Like he's a little bit of all his influences. He's not just one thing. And I think that's beautiful for us as even, as Christians, and that Jesus is like he's the number one third culture kid coming in, consuming and immersing himself into a culture that wasn't his, but to be a bridge and to use and to find a way to connect that way. And I think it was beautiful. It helped me to understand Vaughn's struggle with it as well. When he said he went to, was it Korea? You can talk about that, about a place where he was there. And actually, you should tell that story.
Well, I was actually in China and I was still trying to figure myself out. And I went to this place, and a gentleman who was leading the tour was an American. He was a white American who had been in China for like 9 years, learned to speak the language fluently, was a translator. And he went to this restaurant and he was trying to get us a table. And he would speak to the stewardess in Mandarin Chinese, and she would speak back to him in broken English. No room for you. No. And then he would speak back to her in her native tongue, and she would speak back to him. No seat for you. No. And then he came, like I happened to be just standing there. He's like, "Did you just see what happened?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "What was that all about?" He's like, "Well, I speak to her in her language, and she speaks back to me in broken language, in English." He's like, because she doesn't respond to what she hears, she responds to what she sees. Mm-hmm. She sees an American male. And he says, you have an opportunity to connect with them like I never would because of your Asian features in your face. He's like, you have an opportunity to become a bridge. And that was the first time where like I had this kind of awareness that was like, okay, there could be purpose in how I'm made up. And so it put me on this journey to where I felt like it was the first time I felt like someone said I belong to something. Mm-hmm. And not just that you don't belong. And so, it just put me on this kind of campaign for my own life to help people feel that like they belong.
So, so did you get the table?
We did eventually.
Okay. So it works. Just want to prove it works,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the interesting thing too is that if you look where it's been posted that I am third culture spoken word, there's people who are handicapped who are saying, "Hey, does I am third culture, is this it?" I'm like, absolutely. It doesn't have to be just about your skin color or where you grew up. It has to do with the uniqueness, the struggles, everything that is part of who you are. That's what makes you that unique mix fit. There's no replica, and you bring it all together. And I think it's beautiful that people are identifying to this way beyond. There's so many different cultures. Cultures are huge.
Have you copyrighted the phrase or the word mix fit?
We haven't. No.
What you waiting on? That's
Well, it makes a great hashtag too. So
right.
That sure does.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how you describe all that, because really, when you think of it, we're all minorities these days.
Right.
We're all so diverse, whether it be skin color, language, disabilities, or the way we live our life. In a sense, we're all mixed fits, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Absolutely. And I think that's why I feel, because we believe in it, to put our energy into it, is that, it doesn't take long. Listen to the news. there's a struggle for identity. And
Right.
it is something that is really, I think, that is plaguing our world right now, is that people don't know who they are. And when you don't know who you are, you will search, you will experiment, you will try, and you'll act out even out of frustration of that, trying to discover out who you really are. And that's why, like, even like we've developed a clothing line around, mixed fit, and that it's to clothe, the mission statement of that is to clothe people with the idea that they belong, because we believe that any conversation about who you are will ultimately lead back to your origin, your true origin, who is our creator. So that's kind of our mission in that.
Well, speaking of who you are, you guys lead worship, you're musicians, and the whole music piece. How would you say your interculturalism has influenced your music?
Yeah, I would say it's a very natural inclusion, because it just, us being honestly expressing who we are, it just naturally comes out. Irene comes from Spanish music world, and then also enjoys other genres of music as well. And then with my, I actually grew up with a lot of my church experience has been in actually African American church setting. Yeah. And then now we're translating our songs into Korean and into Spanish, and
that's awesome.
Trying to integrate that too. And then musically, it's kind of a hybrid. We've even come through some of the experiences of, just finishing. We just released a new EP not too long ago, and called The Love Trip, which is basically about, just trying to create music that would be like a mixtape soundtrack for people to kind of discover God more. Right. And even just the journey of trying to find, radio support and everything. It's like, we've gotten from both sides that it doesn't quite sound gospel-y enough for us. And it's like, and then on the other side, it's like, it's a little too edgy. It's a little too, yeah. So it's like, even in our music, we're misfits, it's, and it's like every creative, it's like you would want to belong, in a sense, but then in other ways, it's like, it's kind of cool. We embrace it. Like, okay, we don't sound like everything else out there, and that's maybe that's not a bad thing. Yeah.
Well, don't get offended. Don't get offended by the radio guys, because I'm a radio guy, and you're trying to find the right sound for the radio station. Right.
Sure.
And I was talking with I don't know, a year or two ago with a hip hop artist, a local hip hop artist, and he seemed offended that radio wasn't playing his music. And there's a couple of things that come to mind when I hear somebody say that. First of all, maybe your music isn't very good, but in his, that was not the case for him. It's just not the style of music that necessarily a Christian radio station is playing, because obviously Christian radio stations need to make money, and they make money by advertising, and the advertising is, be based on listenership, right? And so if it's not a popular sound, it's not necessarily that it's not good music. It's just there are reasons, underlying factors that are beyond your control. But it's not to say that music sucks or anything either. So just being blunt and honest,
Yeah. Yes. I appreciate that.
That's for sure. Oh, man.
Do you still listen to cassettes and 8-tracks? I mean, that's a lost love right there.
Yeah, sure. I have not listened to 8-tracks in a long time.
Right. Because you can't get an 8-track player, probably. It's not in your car, so.
But I do. I'm an avid vinyl collector. So
okay.
I love listening to vinyl records. It's become almost like collecting baseball cards to me. Like, everyone's got their favorite artist or albums in the past. And it's fun to go to old record stores, antique shops, and to find records that you're looking for from, that you remember or that you cherish. So that's become a little hobby of mine too.
I would like to be a vinyl collector. I never was. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I don't have the equipment, and I'd probably be pretty picky. Like, I've got a home studio with, top of the line gear and stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't have a record player, if I can use that term.
Right.
I'd probably end up buying a really expensive unit with a really, really expensive needle, because that's what makes the sound. But I would probably lean towards...
I wouldn't know.
Thanks for that. Just aged me right there. I would probably lean towards new music on vinyl as compared to the old music. And the only reason for that is because my fear would be if I buy a used record, that there would be scratches on it and it wouldn't sound as good. That would be the only reason, right? I would want to buy the new stuff that's sealed and hasn't been played before. That would be the only thing for me.
Wow.
Well, I tell you, for me, like and I'm sure you would notice the distinction as well, is like the mix of pop music and modern music is very different from, you know, the 80s and the 70s and the 60s.
Yes.
When they played real instruments?
Exactly.
Yes.
and they didn't have vocoders.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And there's something so kind of, it feels human. Like it's
yes.
like I almost crave to hear the imperfection. And it's I don't know, for my ear, it really you know, everything's not as compressed and digital.
Right.
And I don't know, it's a nice kind of reset, I think, for my ear, that I enjoy about it.
Vaughn, where are you able to find vinyl? Like, they still have stores, or
yeah,
you have
they
to buy them online, or?
I've bought a couple, like, what I would say, like, are some pieces that I really want, like some Oscar Peterson albums, and some Miles Davis stuff that I've bought online, you know, and they grade them and they show the actual records so you can kind of inspect them, you know, that
as soon as they grade them, you know, you're paying more though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So those, and you're willing to do that for you know, some of your centerpieces. Sure. But, I have found a lot antique shops, you know, like, our family has recently, like, we just enjoyed just going to antique shops and just looking around. And there's a lot of vinyl around these antique shops. And then there's also a lot of, you know, in certain small towns or, you know, main streets, there's it's not too uncommon to find like these trendy record shops that, you know, that carry old vinyl. Like it's almost coming back in style.
Are they expensive?
Usually not at the record shops. You know, they'll be maybe 10, 15, you know, and then up, you know, if you have like some iconic albums like the Beatles, and they start to get, you know, like you can get up to $50 or something.
Okay.
One of my prized possessions is I have a first run factory sealed Thriller album.
Wow. That's got to be worth a fortune.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much it's worth. I paid. I didn't pay too. Like I found like an amazing deal from a guy. I don't think he realized what he had, but there's quite a few sealed Thriller albums out there, but a lot of them have these stickers on it, like of like that it won a Grammy or award-winning album. So it was their later runs. So this was before it was its first run. That was, you know, it didn't have some of the other stickers on it. So yeah,
that's awesome.
I may have told this story before, Ayiesha. I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you or if it was a couple of years ago or whatnot. Way back when I attended a church and we were in the process of replacing the main speakers in the church. So we had hired a company to come in and install, and we got a price break if we showed up and helped. So obviously it's a church. Yeah, we want a price break. So we helped install these things, being, you know, hanging it, you know, above the ceiling and the rafters or whatever else, tying it down and making sure they were all secure and stuff. When they were running the sound through it and trying to get the EQ balanced, the song they played was Thriller. Because the song is so sonically there. Like it's got all the bells and whistles and all the different sounds you would want to hear just to make sure everything's clear and crisp, and you can hear the low end and the high end and everything else. That was the song they played. And back then, that wasn't a song that you would play in church. Right? But they had this thing cranked, and I'm glad they did, because I learned a lot just on the song itself. Like, I listened to it as a teenager and stuff, and you crank it on your Walkman. There's another term for you. You crank it on your Walkman and whatever, but I didn't appreciate it as much until they cranked it through the church speakers.
Wow.
So, but you're telling me you've got this Thriller album that you haven't even opened.
Correct. Yeah. It's actually framed on my wall. Yeah. I have it in a vinyl record. I
think that's just a waste. Frame. That's,
I have the Thriller album that I can listen to though too.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So how do you know there's an actual album in that?
Well, that's a great point. Like I could have been sold
just a piece of cardboard.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But at least it's framed and it looks good.
Yeah, sure. It's a great story.
Yeah, exactly. So now you are a worship leader. You are part of a relatively small church, I guess, in San Jose, California.
Yeah, correct.
What is small? What is small?
It's kind of hard now, because with the pandemic and everything, it's affected everybody. But before the pandemic, we were probably around 5,000 to 6,000 in attendance.
So that was a little sarcasm on my part, folks. Yeah. How do you manage a group that large? Is it multiple locations?
There are multiple locations. Most of of that number though is the central location though, in San Jose. So it's multiple services. So that would be through 4 services on a weekend, 1 Saturday and 3 on Sunday.
Now the 3 on Sunday, parking must be a nightmare.
Yeah, it's not the fun part for sure. But through the police and everything and volunteers, it's navigated rather well. So
you just hope the first service didn't run too long, because that's what I've seen in churches where, the first service is supposed to end at a certain time, and then you've got that leeway and that time to be able to move traffic out and move traffic in as far as parking. But the first service ends late. It's just shot for the rest of the day.
Domino effect, though.
Yeah. And then it affects the kids' ministry. Like it really makes their job difficult as well. So that's primary objectives is, end on time.
Yeah. But the Spirit is moving. The Spirit is moving.
Yeah. He's moving you to hurry up and get out of the parking lot.
Now, do you guys do original material in your worship sets?
Absolutely. Yep. We do a lot of original material. Yeah. And there's also, we've done two projects with the church as well. And so that is under cathedral worship, but a lot of, our songs are on there. A lot of, Vaughn songs are on there.
Nice.
And it's a very multicultural, multi-generational, multi-everything church, which is really great that the Lord called us there. So it works because you can, in one service, you can put a little bit of everything in there, and it just works. I love church. That. Yeah,
it's a mixed fit church.
It is absolutely.
Now, does the congregation know that it's original music, or how when you attend a church and you're participating in worship and you just know the songs, but a lot of times you don't know if it's a Elevation song or a Hill song or Maverick City or whatever else. And you're just singing and you just think it's a great song, but you don't know that it's unique to your church. No one else is singing this song, but you don't know that. Do people know if it's your song or if it's unique to your church?
I think yes and no. I think there's been times where we just incorporate it, and we don't necessarily tell people. People may ask and they'll find out that way. And then there's been a couple numbers that we wrote like specific for a sermon, and they'll introduce the song as like, hey, this is the song that we just, like a pastor did a series called I Am Courageous. And he came to me with like a little, and this is the first and only time he's ever done this. He's like, I feel like I have a little bit of a song. Would you help me write it? And long story short, we wrote a song together, and it was kind of the feature. It's the newest single from our church, and it was kind of like, and captured the whole series that he was sharing. And it became a song that way for our church.
So he gets writing credits on there.
He does, yeah. Absolutely.
Is he musically inclined at all, or is this the first? Like you said, it's a first for him, but does he have the ability?
He does not refer to himself as a musician. Like he can certainly carry a tune, and he plays a little bit of guitar. And so he did a great job just giving me kind of like the melodic hook and a lot of the words that are in the song now. I tried to use as much as he gave me.
Right.
And it was a fun experience.
I attended a church years ago where we had a pastor who could not keep a tune. Like he had absolutely no, like he was the senior pastor. He was the lead pastor. He had no musical ability whatsoever. And I was the sound guy. And so he's wearing his lav mic, and you see him, and during the service, like you see him praising and singing and everything else. I'm thinking, and of course he had his mic turned off. And then he would turn it on right before he would go up, because ideally you'd want to keep it on the whole time. And then I would listen in cue and hear if he's actually singing or not. He actually a few times did leave the mic on. Can I tell you, he was an awful singer.
Oh gosh. That's what you say, bless your heart.
Yeah, exactly.
Pastor, bless your heart.
But you know what he did a lot? He was lip syncing a lot of the time. If it was right before he had to go up and speak, and he had to turn on his mic because you don't want to hear the thump or whatever of him turning on the lav mic. So he'd turn on the mic and he'd be up there worshiping, but he was lip syncing, and you would never know it. And you do what you have to do, right? Because you're right. Visually in front of people, and you have to be an example to people. You can't just not sing. Unlike me, where I just don't sing, right? I'm not saying I don't have musical ability. I do. I just, we've had discussions about this in the past, Ayiesha. I tend not to sing as much as I'd like to, because I don't want to lose my voice, because I get paid to talk on the morning show. And if my voice is shot for a Monday morning, that's my livelihood. So
You'd be in trouble,
So I tend not to sing, just because I like to belt it out with the harmonies, and then I'll just kill my voice doing that. But yeah, it's interesting that you've got a pastor who wants to help write a song, and he doesn't call himself musical. So
yeah, it's very cool. And might I add, you have a beautiful voice.
Absolutely.
I'd rather my wife said that, but thanks.
I knew you were going.
You knew that was coming, Ayiesha?
Yes, I did.
That's funny.
So you've got several thousand people attending your church, and when you have to introduce a new song, what is that like? Is it something that you kind of bring in slowly? Obviously, you need the worship team to learn the song first, but how do you introduce it to the congregation that big?
Well, I'll tell you, in my experience, if you don't treat it like a new song, sometimes it goes over better that way. Like if you treat sometimes it feels a bit cumbersome to be like, okay, everybody, hold on. We're going to try something new. Like it's right. Like when you brace them for it, it's kind of like like I feel like people's capacity to learn is really high. Like
sure.
It's I think it's a lot higher than we give ourselves credit for. I'll put it that way.
Especially if it's an easy to understand or easy to sing chorus, and then if there's a more complicated verse, but they already know the chorus, it's probably easier for them to learn that as well.
Correct. Yeah. So I feel like if the song is produced well, and there's great, like sonically it sounds strong, and it doesn't sound like it is wavering or like it is unsure, I feel like it creates the experience that people feel comfortable to jump into. I remember watching, like you watch clips of kids going to these concerts of like Beyonce or any rap artist, and they memorize every lyric. Yeah. It's just like, and just like, how do they all know all this stuff? Like, I think like in the church world, we feel like, I don't know, like people are incapable of learning and singing a few words. And I think that sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit that I think we are capable of, learning some things and being able to jump in. So, it's prepping your team well. But then I feel like too, it's like, if you don't act like it's new and, an iffy, adventurous kind of effort, then it gives people the confidence to jump in.
My kids hop in the car and they'll want to switch to their radio station. And so they do. And every single song, they know the lyrics to. Like, I don't know how they can memorize.
It's all about capacity.
Well, and maybe I just don't have capacity anymore. I don't know. I used to memorize phone numbers, but who memorizes phone numbers anymore?
That's right.
It's all in the speed dial, right? So, yeah.
You know what? Speaking of kids, is Zion playing any instruments or singing, or where is he musically?
He definitely has a musical leaning, but he's learning piano, a little bit of drums.
Awesome.
And he sings. But, around church, everybody's always saying, hey, are you going to be sing like your mom and daddy? So right now he says no, but at home he loves to sing. So yeah, we're super excited for him, getting him a little station set up so he can start making his own songs, because he makes his own songs and sings about everything from applesauce to cookies or whatever.
How old is he?
He's 9.
He's 9. Okay. Now the piano lessons, is that by choice, or is that, he's being forced to that?
He's being forced.
No, it's by choice. It's by mom's choice.
It's by mom's choice. Yeah. Hey, I think if there's one thing that parents should do is to force their kids to take piano lessons, whether they are musically inclined or not, because I think there's huge learning stuff in there, whether it's just simple reading music or learning notes. And, even if they're not musically inclined, I think it's a good experience, because I think it really does prepare you for school later on, discipline. I took piano lessons as a kid. I couldn't stand it. And then having to do practice during the week. Like, really?
Right.
I've got a keyboard in my home studio. Do I ever play it? No, I should. Yes. But I think it's a great experience for kids. I like to think so.
Somewhere.
That's awesome. That's exactly. Zion said, how long do I have to do it? And at first I said, we're going to try it out. But then I got smart because he really pays attention. So I said, and when you get out of school, 12th grade.
He's locked in.
No, I just gave him that to give me the room so I don't have to keep having the conversation. But yeah, he enjoys it.
But the other thing you could do too, especially if he's complaining about the piano, just say, well, no, you can stop playing piano. What other instrument do you want to play instead? Like, kind of give him the choice of, it's not a quitting music. It's like, okay, what musical instrument do you want to move to instead? And, because maybe there'll be guitar or God help you, drums,
Right.
We have a drum kit.
It was a gift. So it just kind of happened. But
well, it's not going to be a gift once he starts playing.
Absolutely. It's that thing when you're raising kids, you're like trying to find out what they're into, what they like, and, kind of exposing them to different things. And even just speaking of third culture, around the corner from our house, I didn't try to do this, but right around the corner from our house, there is a Korean church, and they had like a Korean language school on Friday nights. So at 5 years old, I enrolled Zion to go to Korean school, and he just went for 2 years, didn't really learn the complete language, but it had like an impact on him. He knew something. And then we're learning a little bit of Spanish. And so just kind of dabbling in everything, but just thinking that all those things are going to be kind of tools here and there. And so, but piano, yes, we're sticking with it for sure.
I hear you. Wait, so you enrolled Zion for the language school. How come you didn't enroll yourself too?
I would have, but they weren't, it was for kids only. So it was just for kids. I hear you.
I'm sure they have adult programs too. They must.
I'm sure they do, but not around the corner from my house.
And you haven't bothered to look into it, obviously.
Absolutely. I've learned some important things from Vaughn. Hello, goodbye, thank you, and all those things. And Vaughn has been doing great with Spanish. He knows how to order food and say hello. So.
There you go.
All of that stuff is great for trips, though. If you're going on trips anywhere out of the country, that's to have that ability to pick up the languages and learn a few words. I mean, I I will go to the Caribbean or somewhere warm just to get away, but I usually don't take the time to learn any language or anything like that, except, maybe hello, goodbye, what's on the menu, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great to have a second or third or fourth language.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me this. Do you know what I'm saying? Hallo meine Freunde in Deutschland.
You're asking me this? That's not Dutch. I can tell you, that's not Dutch. What was that? Was that an attempt or something? Because that wasn't Dutch.
It was an attempt. It was something that I learned like years and years ago.
Can you say it again? Say it again.
Hallo, meine Freunde in Deutschland.
Yeah, I don't know that that's Dutch, but thanks.
It was in Germany.
It was in Germany? Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds more German.
Yeah, it is. It's German.
Yeah. The languages are similar, but not quite the same. So
kind of like Portuguese and Spanish. Yeah. Would you say, Irene?
Portuguese and Spanish?
They're almost.
Oh,
like
yes. Oh, there's a lot of words. Absolutely. Yes. Zion has taken Latin in school. And it's amazing how many of those words are like, oh, that's in Spanish, mesa, table. Like, a lot of things are all intertwined. So it's pretty cool.
Comes back to us being misfits.
Absolutely. Right. Yes.
Hey, listen, I appreciate both of you. Thanks for hanging with us on Between the Grooves. It was a great conversation. I enjoyed it.
Yes, indeed. Me too.
Well, thank you guys. We totally enjoyed it. Super honored, super grateful.
Yeah.
And it was a blast talking with you guys. You guys do a great job.
Yes, you do.
Thanks.
You guys are a great team, and I actually want to hear some of your other shows now.
Yeah.
You guys are fun to engage with. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. We like to have fun, and I'll say, there's always, some meat and potatoes in the conversation, but there's also some dessert and some fun stuff that we like to
appetizers too.
Appetizers, exactly. So glad you enjoyed it. Glad you guys were having fun as well.
Oh, we love it. We love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, guys. Y'all
God bless.
do the same.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
God bless.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Vaughn Thompson, what a great conversation.
Man, I just love him. I love his heart, and he's so knowledgeable.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that like he is very, very intelligent. Like he's unassuming. That's what I should say. He's very unassuming, and I just have such an appreciation for his heart and his ministry. Just a really, really great guy. And Irene, she's just a sweetheart. And man, just some folks you're just really glad to know.
I just appreciate how he's seen a need and he's built a ministry around it. Like, and it's not like he's, this is a financial thing for him. This is just a need in his community. And how are we going to deal with this need? What can we do about this? And how can we, welcome people with open arms, no matter what background they are? And it's not just nationality, it's lifestyles and everything else. Like, and you talk about in the Bible about, Jesus being a friend of the sinners. He wasn't hanging out with the Pharisees, right? He was hanging out with the, with the people that weren't, didn't have a great resume, So
those that didn't fit in.
Exactly. And that's what that conversation was all about. So yeah, I really enjoyed that with Vaughn. And, I'm thinking back to our original thing we were talking about right at the start of this episode and food. And I'm getting hungry. Like I'm thinking back on, just having this deja vu now about food and all that deliciousness. You know what I'm saying? Because, my wife is from Guyana. So before I met her, I never had, any real experience with authentic Caribbean food, roti, curry.
Yes.
I mean, my favorite foods right now are roti with chicken curry without the bones. I say without the bones. It tastes better with the bones, I'm told, but I cannot eat that slow. Right? I can't eat. It's so delicious. I can't eat that slow. Right? I need to be eating this stuff, and it's faster if there's no bones.
Let me tell you. You said chicken curry, right?
Right.
you have to see curry chicken.
I can't do the accent.
So there's a right way to eat it, and there's a right way to say it. All right, so enough about food.
Yeah.
Let's get into some other food, some other meat. We've got some advice from Tyler Roberts, all the way from Red Rocks Worship.
Your job is very simple. It encompasses two things. One, your first and foremost job is to just bless the presence of God. It is to worship Jesus. And so you go first in doing that. Every time you step up to do it, that's exactly what you do. You don't do it to earn anything from your senior leadership. You don't do it to perform. You don't do it to, wow anybody. You do it to bless the Lord with excellence, bless the Lord. And then the second thing is your job after you are worshiping God and your focus is right where it needs to be. Your second job is to be a worship leader, to get people from there. We say this all the time, to get people from there to Jesus. There is the story of the lady who lost her husband and her kids are teenagers. There is the husband whose wife cheated on him and she left him. There is the 18-year-old who's trying to decide where he's going to college, or maybe I don't want to go to college, or the other person that's struggling with XYZ, depression, anxiety, yada, yada, yada. We get them from there to Jesus, right? And the way we do that is we lead them to Jesus. Those are the two things. It starts with your worship to the Lord and making sure that you're focused where it needs to be. And then it's, okay, now my job is to lead people to Jesus. Because at the end of the day, the only reason we have worship leaders is because people need to be led. Otherwise, if we didn't need to be led, we would all just be called worshipers. That's what we do. So be a worship leader and lead them, get them from there, wherever their situation is, wherever it's going on in their life, to Jesus. Get their eyes off their problems, get their eyes onto Jesus. And then let him do the work.
A couple of things I like about what Tyler had to share there. I mean, first of all, he talks about it's not a show, and I've always been an advocate of that. Mm-hmm. I tire so much of seeing social media posts from people in the music business, in the Christian music business, that talk about, just had a great show last night, and that just drives me nuts. Just don't use that terminology. Don't use those words. It's just wrong in my opinion. Unless it's a pop show. But if there's any element of worship in there, let's not call it a show, right? Right. Call it a gig if you want, but just not a show. But I like what he also had to say, and he just glossed over it in part when he talked about worship and blessing the Lord with excellence. And I think that's really important to note as well. The excellence, like do our best, give our best. Right. And then just talking about a worship leader taking us from here or there, as he said, to Jesus. And then he starts giving all these examples of these different people at different phases of their life. And I'm thinking, that's what Vaughn was talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So I just love the similarities there.
I love it too. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. And that's what counts. That's what we're here for. I remember speaking with another artist friend of mine. He's passed now, but one thing he said, he was like, Ayiesha, when it's all said and done, I'm just the donkey he's riding.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. We are here to point people to Jesus, and that's what our purpose is. So thanks for that, Tyler.
Thank you very much, Tyler. And thanks to Vaughn and his wife for swinging by all the way from California to have a chat with us. Really appreciate them as well. And thank you for listening to Between the Grooves. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, leave your comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for listening to Faith Strong Today's Between the Grooves podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider sharing it with your friends, rating our podcast, or giving us some love on your socials to your amazing friends and followers will only help us reach more people. We'd also love to hear from you and share your feedback in an upcoming episode. Send your video or written message to Ayiesha and James on Facebook and Twitter at Between Grooves, or email us anytime, hello@faithstrongtoday.com.